From the time I can remember, I was terrified of my father. Through recovery, I think the biggest thing that happened to me was the narrative changed. I got to find out that there is a power bigger than me. And when I plug into that, I get to define who and what my life looks like. I remember balling up my fist, and without this guy even thinking I was gonna do it, I hit him square in the nose, and this dude hit the floor screaming Bloody Mary.
Welcome back to the Seano Show. Today we're sitting down with someone whose life story is all about resilience, reinvention, and unapologetic authenticity. Steve Lucky-Luciano's lived a life filled with challenges, transformations, and incredible insights. From navigating life's toughest moments to emerging as a storyteller, he's an entrepreneur and a cultural voice. His journey, it's raw, it's fucking inspiring. Brother, it's my honor to welcome the show. Lucky, welcome, man.
Thank you, Seano. It's an honor to be asked to be here today, man. So thank you.
Right? What a nice we have so much to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Let's let folks know a little bit about you. You grew up in Santa Monica.
I'm 57 years old. I grew up on the West Side. My parents, we grew up in like the Pico Robertson, West LA area. And yeah, my parents, a lot of crazy stuff going on in my house. I always want to mention, as I talk about this, is I'm a firm believer now that my parents loved me. Mm-hmm. And they wanted only the best for me. Yeah. And they're working with tools that they had. Okay.
Right.
Nonetheless, it was a crazy experience. And
what made it crazy?
You know, the dichotomy of my family. I have an older sister that's 3.5 years older than me. My father was he was a violent and angry and sick man. And he had a lot of reasons to be. I didn't know at the time, but he was a scary man. And there was physical abuse that went on in our home. You know, later on, there was some other stuff. We'll get into that, but there was definitely some physical abuse along with other stuff going on in our house. And it was just a scary place to live. It was a scary place to be. From the time I can remember, I was terrified of my father. Terrified of my father. And when I say terrified, I'm talking about urinating when he'd walk by me in my pants.
Wow.
And sometimes I defecate my pants getting smacked, you know? So it was, and I think that the level of fear, that I was experiencing, I think that with some people, it might take them and have them want to go to a place like school and take it out on other kids, and didn't have that effect on me. The stuff I was experiencing made me even more scared. I knew what it felt like to get hit. I knew what it felt like, and I didn't want any part of that. And me going into an environment of school, I was a sissy. I was a chubby kid. I was poor. I didn't have the right shit. And I was the one that was the target. And there was a stretch in my life, you know, through grade school that a lot of things had transpired, but that I didn't want the beating. I was trying to duck the beating at home and trying to duck the beating at school. And I was a coward, you know, and I was just afraid of everything and trying to walk around on eggshells and hide out. And I did that all through grade school, man. When I was around 9, I was at school one day, and it was still me and my sister were in the same. She was 3.5 years older, but in grade school, we still end up in the same school for 1 year. And somebody came to the door. And they were like, we need to see Stephen down in the office. Going down there with one of the counselors. I don't know what's going on. When I get down there, I see my sister in the principal's office, and she's there with a couple counselors, and there's a police officer, and there's these other people. We get in there, and I come to find out pretty quickly that these are
Child Protective Services.
Child Protective CPS. And along with LAPD, and they're there, and they're investigating some stuff about some abuse, physical abuse and things that are going on, and through my sister. And we get pulled in there, and we ended up going to a police station and being questioned by social workers and all these different things. They promised that I'd stay with my sister, that they wouldn't separate us. That's all she was begging, was don't separate me from my brother. And we did a bunch of interviewing. And I remember in the evening time, they came over and they were like, your sister's older than you. She's going to McLaren Hall and you're going to a foster home and for a few nights. That's what they said. And, and I was, when you're kind of pulled out of your environment and you're 9 years old and you don't know what's happening, you don't know where your parents are, regardless of how crazy it might have been in my house, those are my parents, man.
Yeah, straight
I
up.
love them.
Right on.
I don't care how bad it is. That's all I know is my parents. And so, and all I had was my sister, and I didn't really understand what was going on. They ended up separating us. They pulled me up to a lovely woman named Kate Jackson. I remember her name because of Kate Jackson from Charlie's Angels.
Oh my God, right.
And
oh man,
it was in South Central Los Angeles, and she was just this jovial, beautiful, lovely, big Black woman that was there when I got there. And she could tell right when I rolled up that I was a little bit just kind of tripping on everything. And she talked to the officers that had brought me there, and she kind of pulled me in, and she's like, "It's all right, baby." And she's just talking me in and got inside. And, I was there, and I was there for a while. And the kids in there was a couple younger than me, a couple older than me. But I was in the middle, and everybody was Black. Everybody was Black there. And it was a cool house. They had roosters in the back. And
oh shit.
It was, it was dope, man. It was cool. But at 9 years old, not knowing where your family was, I'm saying it was dope when I look back on it now. But at the time, I'm like, she's making stuffed peppers and she brings me in, you want something to drink, big glass of Kool-Aid. And I'm still kind of tripping. And I remember that first evening after I ate, she said, she had put my stuff upstairs. She said, "Come up here. There's a room for you." And there was a room with 2 beds and nobody was in the other bed. And it was my bed. And she's like, "This is where you're going to sleep at." And it's like, "All right." And immediately, man, I think I started tearing up. And she was like, "Do you want to come watch TV with me downstairs?"
Oh, wow.
For a while.
Oof.
And, and so I sat with her, and, finally I had to go to bed, and she took me up there. And I remember they had gone by the house and grabbed clothes of ours and different shit, so I changed them like my pajamas or whatever. And I got into this, she tucked me into this bed, and the bed smelled different than my bed and felt different. And I don't know, man. I just fucking went to bed and told her everything was fine. But God damn, I was crying, and I was trying to sneak into this other room to pick up a phone, but I didn't know my aunt's number. I only knew my home number, and I could hear her coming upstairs, and it was like I couldn't figure it out, man. And I ended up, I think, crying myself to sleep, and woke up the next day, and it was such a new environment that I wasn't used to, colors and places and smells and things that I kind of would get lost in that for a few hours. And then I'd be back at the front window, keeping an eye for the car that dropped me off. I knew that car. And every car I'd see coming down, I thought it was that car, and because they said they would come back, and eventually, you stop looking for the car.
Right. Right, man.
So I have to say again that woman, she had a profound effect on me. Her generosity, her sweetness, her concern, her care. I probably couldn't have landed in a more safer environment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Miss Jackson would have been your first angel in your life.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Pretty much, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Where was the next stop after there? How long were you there?
I was there a while. I think I was there maybe 4 or 5 weeks. Which seems like a fucking year when you're little, at least.
When you're fucking 9 years old.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And anyways, I came back to, but one day the car does show up, but I'm fucking busy fucking chasing a pig around the backyard. And I get in, and I'm thrilled. I mean, my they're telling me, "Okay, we're gonna go. There's a court, and you have to be there at the court, and then you're gonna get to go with your mom after the court." And I'm like, okay. And the universe is starting to fucking come a little bit together again. I'm having some hope. And so we ended up going to court, and I remember my sister being to the side of me, and I'm there, and I saw my mom just wringing her hands in the courtroom. She was a mess. And my dad, who looked a mess too. And they said some things, and next thing you know, we're home at our place with my mom. and my dad's no longer in the picture. He's completely out of the picture. And I'm from the gate like, whew, this dude's gone, man. I've lived my whole life.
Wow.
This terror. And my mom's a single mom. She was a receptionist at an advertising agency. Miss how long ago this is, bro? My mom's making, I think, $1,000 a month salary. She had to raise 2 kids.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It was like that. And let me say this, that prior to this experience in my life, my record at school, there was nothing crazy about my record at school. I showed up, participated. I was a good kid. I didn't get in trouble. But when I came back at the 4th grade from that experience, as I looked back and started doing work on that, I was burning crayons on the back heater. I was breaking windows on the way home with friends.
Right.
I started shoplifting. We started setting fires.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
it's on.
that it's on, right?
It's on.
And my mom, there's no way. I mean, you know that growing up at our time, came home for the lights are on. You make sure you're home before the lights came on the street. But you're latchkey kid, like you don't. There's nobody there. There's nobody there from fucking 3 till 6:30.
Right.
And I was out with this newfound like almost freedom, and I knew my mom couldn't control me. She was a softie. She was a softie of the. My dad was how my mom was soft, and just trouble just kind of started and getting. I got suspended countless times, and this is really when I was like getting picked on and all that stuff, and I was just always getting into trouble. And so, yeah, that all kind of went down that path. And I remember by the time I was in junior high, it was when I was 13, the road was already kind of defined and I was going the other way, man. I'm getting into more trouble and I'm starting to experiment with alcohol first. I'm experiencing that at 13. I'm starting to like,
you start dipping in. That's right. Got it in.
Alcohol. And then eventually by 13, 14, somebody's found their sister's weed. And you know how the story goes. But I had wrote something earlier today that I wanted to mention on here. And that was that my disease, which is alcoholism, the alcoholism that Steve Lucky suffers from. My experience has been my disease is craving a narrative to push and fulfill, to drive and fulfill a narrative. It needs that. My addiction needs a fucking narrative, bro. And the narrative that I had was all the shit that was going wrong in my life. And I believed in God, but I didn't trust God. I always believed there was a God, but I felt like God wasn't looking out for me.
Right.
You know? And if there was a God, how did he give me this, everything fucked up, and all that. I didn't know that at the times, but now when I look at it, there had to be a narrative. And I began to understand if I really wanted to drink and use, there better be a good narrative to why I'm fucking up my life.
Right on, man. I get that. Yeah.
And as my life's unfolding, not only do I already have some like traumas and experiences, I'm now recreating more shame and trauma through the actions and the disease. So it's almost like I'm compiling more and more. And, that neighborhood, we're all playing as friends and when we're kids. And as I got older, what I didn't really know is like the hub of this neighborhood and where I come from was right there, started there. So your friends are now all becoming members of this thing. And you're seeing older dudes that are coming out of YA and prison and the level of respect and the look that they've got. And I start to look at that. And I was a kid that was primed to look at that. And like, I thought that was like a man. You gotta remember, man, like when I was going through all this sissy shit, I didn't have anybody to tell. I didn't have a dad there to tell. I was trying to figure it out. And so as I started getting around and introduced to this idea of getting into a neighborhood, there were people that I was looking at were older that, I wasn't looking at my dad. I didn't give a fuck who my dad was. I was looking at these dudes, and that's what I thought was respect. And that's what I thought I wanted to be. I wanted what these guys had. You're going to live a certain way and you have to do certain things if you want to be one of these guys. So the drugs are getting heavier and heavier. And so is the involvement in the street and things we're doing.
And you're no longer a pudgy kid anymore.
Oh, no, no, no. I had been bullied since the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and from grammar, and it follows you to junior high. Kids are relentless, man.
Yeah, no shit.
And my dad was now gone, and this dude was gonna beat my ass at school after school. And he told me on that Friday, when you got at the bus stop, I'm gonna beat your ass. And I remember being in the last class of the day, and the bell was gonna ring. And I was trying to figure out another route or how I could beat everybody to the bus stop and get on the first bus and get out and make it home. And the class lets out. And just as I'm like making my decision, this dude comes around the corner. Dude, it's a little bit kind of like a movie, but listen, he comes around the corner and there's like a crowd of people.
Oh, man.
That want to see this fight.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even wait till we get to the bus stop. It's right outside the school gate. And, he starts with like this pushing thing. And everybody's there. People are pushing him into me to kick the fight off. And I just remember at that point in time, one of the most important times of my life, I figured I'm going to get an ass whooping. I'm going to go home with an ass whooping, but I'm going to give this dude something to go home with.
Yeah, right on.
One way or another.
Yeah.
And I remember balling up my fist. And without this guy even thinking I was going to do it, I just laid one on him, man. And lucky enough, I hit him square in the nose. And this dude hit the floor screaming Bloody Mary.
Wow. Right on.
And running off. And I ended up getting suspended for that. He got suspended too. I was out of there. I left. But when I got to school on Monday with my mom, because they called her and said I'm being suspended and I had to come with her, I remember when I was, for one, that experience of me doing that, I felt right away a sense of power. I was like, I've taken back. It was like a liberating feeling. When I got to school with my mom, the way that people were looking at me was a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
And so I took that, bro, and with the anger and, part of being scared when I was little, that overwhelming feeling, it was also being powerless. Like I didn't have I wasn't big enough to change the things. Well, this situation had given me this idea that I have the power in me to physically change my situation. And that's when all the different things really started to transpire. And I basically said, and I think it's kind of human nature, at some point in time, I go, I'm not going to be the pursued. I'm going to be the pursuer.
Yeah.
That's
you turn the table.
Right. And when you have that influence of the neighborhood and these dudes, that makes sense. Like, fuck it. I'm going to take shit. I would take your shit. You ain't taking my shit because I'm already going to take your shit, and the crimes and the drugs escalate. This thing gets worse as it goes. And I also say this, you've heard me say that I was addicted to the lifestyle as much as I was addicted to the drugs, man.
Yeah. Break that down for people, buddy, what that means. It's important we talk about this.
There's some type of a high or a get over something I get from stealing, from physically doing some shit, from discharging a gun, there's different things, and flexing that power and having that power, you get addicted to it, or you just, it's hard to live with it. And you have to do a little more because less is getting you off. And it's kind of the same as the drugs. And I was caught up in that lifestyle. Like I wanted to do things the wrong way. Man, if I'm telling you I'm 57 and you were to look at when Scarface and movies like that came out.
Yeah.
Dude, it was in the most impressionable time in my life.
Yeah, I get it. Right.
So there's gangster shit and I'm seeing gangster shit and I'm believing that I can do gangster shit.
Right. And you are.
And we are. And we're getting away with some of it.
Yeah, that's right. And also I think it's important, buddy, you tell me, but those guys that you looked up to, now they're your family and they're giving you love. And they're like, Lucky, you come with us. And they're getting right.
Absolutely.
So you got your tribe now.
You don't want to impress your parents you want to impress them.
Right.
Their validation is what I've been looking for.
Right.
The fact that you think I'm worthy and good and you consider me your road dog, like that, I needed that, and so. And
you went deep in that.
Yeah, man, I did. Listen, man, and I say this, and I've said this before I've never portrayed to be some fucking killer. I have homeboys of mine that are here and that aren't here. That are those guys. I wasn't one of those guys.
Right.
Okay. I did a bunch of dirt. I did a bunch of prison time and shoe programs, but there were dudes that were really, really stone cold. And I've never portrayed or tried to be that. You know what I'm saying? But my hands are dirty. My hands are dirty. I was involved in, you name it. So, yeah, one thing, Seano, I want to say too, is that in looking at these guys that were older than me, a lot of them had needles in their arm. Most of them had a needle in their arm.
Right.
And so when I saw one of my homies getting high, he said to me, "Do you want a shot?" It was a speedball. I didn't know what the fuck that did, but I had already smoked crack by this point in time. I was game. And I said, yeah. And he hooked up a shot. And when he gave me a shot of dope, I was 17. I think at that point in time, what that drug produced in me, I had been looking for that type of a checkout for a while. That was, I could breathe. Like you hear people, the first time I drank, I heard harps, like
Yeah.
For shooting dope, that was what it was like for me, and I began to chase that. And I'm pulling off crimes and different things that are moving up in level. And, I end up, with all this, bro, I end up meeting a great woman named Jessica, and she's in love with me. And I'm committing crimes. I'm trying to also build a brand legitimately and sell some weed on the side. And she loves me and dropping off the weed.
Back when weed was actually illegal. Yeah.
Right.
A weed dealer.
Drive with the gun in my car. She knows it. I got the kid in the car. Like, she was my rider. She was young. We were kids,
Dude.
And
man.
but I'm trying to fund another brand. So there's this lick that we're gonna do with one of my homeboys, rest in peace, Paulie, and trying to shortcut, man, trying to live both lives, trying to think I can ride this fence and have one life in legitimacy and one life in crime. And I ended up, catching a big case for kidnap robbery out of Santa Monica, and was facing a chunk of time and a second strike, and I ended up taking a great deal. I caught a little extra time because there was somebody that they wanted that was involved in it that we wouldn't talk about, right? So I ended up catching, having to take a deal, but I still got a great deal. I was gone, and I missed 4 years of my son's life. I had to leave him when he was just turning 1. So, and in prison, man, I early on, I didn't want, I don't know that I can't say that I wanted to travel that path. I wasn't trying to be one of those guys, but I was definitely showing up at my capacity as a Southerner, and and so yeah, got in there and still kind of believing the doctrine and got involved in shit in there, man, and real quickly kind of ended up on level 4 yards and doing some shoe programs and living with lifers, people that weren't getting out, and which in many ways, I would say I'd much rather do my time on those yards because the dudes you're doing your time with, they're solid, you don't have a bunch of like questionable, weird, everybody's on there, it's running, you're fucking solid. So I did my time in places like that, and I got in trouble in there and caught more time in there. And I didn't chase down drugs in there. I was smart enough to know early on that when you don't have money for something, you don't get it in prison, or you're gonna get yourself fucking stabbed, killed. And so that was like a clear. Problem was, I had homies in there that had the bag, man. So I had a habit at times there, and then you just have to kick, But shot dope in gang muzzle, shot dope in fucking, Lancaster, Corcoran, fucking, and got out and back to running my life, man, the way I felt necessary, and picking up where I left off and getting that woman pregnant with a second child of mine, and looking at my son and telling him, I'm never going to leave you again. And he's, now he's 4 going on. Yeah. He's like 4 years old going on 5. And now we have this bond, and like, I love my kids to death,
I know
bro.
you do, man.
My son was like my little man. He was just he wanted to be with me. He was just the best, but I couldn't, I had to go. I had shit I needed to do. And I wanted to go out and and fraternize or whatever it might be. I wanted to go out there and do what I wanted to do, and I couldn't stay married. And I was running this woman through the fucking ringer. And she had my daughter, and 6 months into her having my daughter and me being out of prison for a little bit, I sat down with a therapist, a couples therapist, and the woman looked at us and said, "Do you want to make this work?" To my wife. And she goes, "Of course, that's why I'm here." And she looked at me and she's like, "Do you want to make this work?" And I felt right at that moment, I felt like, man, dude, get out of the way, because this woman still has a life.
Wow.
And let her maybe have a chance of finding, or just get out of her fucking life and spare this fucking woman and be honest. And I had to say, no, I don't want to work on it. I'm done,
I always got a sense, you've always had a sense of right and wrong though, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Deep inside, I mean, moral compass. And the woman fucking loved me, man. She did everything right. And I just wasn't ready. And so I say that because I ended up moving out and fucking having to explain to my fucking son, I'm just going to be here and there. And bro, I wasn't away from her for 2 weeks before I caught another fucking case, man. A new beef and on top of violation. And now I was fighting a third strike case, And how did I get there again?
Yeah.
Gun and a couple ounces of dope, you know what I'm saying? So we ended up getting a deal, man. We took a deal for 6 years, opposed to them offering us 18 to avoid the strike.
Wow.
So the first couple proceedings, they were like, sign for 18 right now, and you don't have that L on you. Take the 18. And we didn't. We stayed. And my attorney advised both of them, these laws are changing. We're going to keep on postponing. And he was right. And so I remember Judge Ito was the judge. He calls counsel up. And they're talking. You can't hear what they're saying, but you can see their body movement. And you can see the prosecutor's getting burned out. And my attorney's just like, yeah, come back. And he's looking at us, and he just looks down and he walks in. And Judge Ito's like, hey, guys, I am not going to send these guys away on a third strike. They're both drug addicts, first off.
Oh, he said that, huh?
Yeah. He goes,
Wow.
I'm not going to wash these guys up for life because of drugs, of this case. And he goes, they'll be back here on appeal in a couple of years. And he goes, so with that, I'm going to give you the mandate of the midterm. And he goes, because you have 2 strikes already, I'm doubling your sentence at 80%. And so that all worked out. And we ended up walking out of there. I was doing somersaults out of that place. I was, because I thought I was getting really stretched.
Yeah, I bet,
okay.
man.
So, but again, back into the system. Now my daughter's growing up, my son's growing up, and I'm getting into trouble in there,
Yeah.
I'm getting in trouble in there. And my wife's, my ex-wife at the time, she just didn't play all that shit, bro. And she just was like, one thing she told me goes, I'm never going to play games with the kids. I'm never going to use these kids or talk badly or use them to not,
right on.
I want you in their life. And so she would drive after I left her in there. She would drive up 5-6 hours with my kids, wait in line for 2 hours, get searched down to bring my kids for an hour visit in person.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And so my kids remember vending machines and visiting, when I get out and all that shit we do, man. And so eventually I do parole.
Let's talk about the first time you got sober, buddy. The first time you really took sobriety seriously.
Well, it was me getting out the second time. I had quickly met a stripper that was using some Go Fast. I didn't use Go Fast. I used other shit. One morning I had just gotten a job right out of prison to manage a pizza place. And I was out all night and I could not get up. And she told me, I just do this little line.
Yeah.
And I told her nothing's going to happen. And I poured a bunch out. And I go, if I'm going to do it, let me just, and I go, this stuff doesn't do anything for me. Well, she goes, it's not, don't do it like that. And I do this big rail. And I'm saying, see, it doesn't do anything. But somehow, 5 minutes later, I'm in the shower, getting showered. And I got to tell you, Sean, this is important because we're coming up to the recovery. In that time, I ended up going to work. She ended up picking me up that night with work, told her to bring some more. We stayed up that night. We got real freaky that night. And now I'm up for like multiple days and on this shit. And that experience that I had over that like 3 days of tweaking out with her and doing it set something off of me, and I started chasing all of it, dude. The insanity of crystal meth, and for a year, and I was deteriorating, and I walk around at 210, and I was 175, and I caught a reflection of myself in a storefront, and I didn't recognize myself.
Wow. Right.
And I sat down on the curb, and I wasn't crying. I sit on the curb, and I was like, dude, I'm turning into the guy I never wanted to be. My kids, my ex-old lady told me, and her parents were like, we're not going to deny, you can come see your kids. You can come have your weekend with your kids at our house. You're not taking the kids anywhere. This happened a week before I saw the reflection of myself. I now couldn't be trusted with my kids, bro. And it was all starting to, and it hit me at that moment. I was like, I was scared because I didn't know how to stop. And I felt like in my heart, I was either going to kill myself, kill somebody else, or I was going to be in prison for the rest. I really, at that moment, felt like those were the only three options left. And I used my cell phone, and I called a couple guys that had come from similar backgrounds of mine that weren't doing that today. And they were in a 12-step fellowship, but I had never wanted to go. And I called them, and I was like, this is where I'm at. And they're like, all right, hold tight, man. There's a parolee house in downtown called Walden House. They have dedicated beds, so you have to be on parole to get a bed in there. And I was on parole, and they're talking about treatment center recovery. I don't know. And so they're like, yeah, I know Wayne Garcia. And I'm hearing that name, and I'm like, all right, we're going to call. And Esteban, my best friend, picks me up. And he's like, don't trip, man. We're going to get you into, and my friends were kind of around, but they were kind of waiting me out. And we call and get Wayne on the phone through my friend. And Wayne's like, what's happening? I got Estelle on my partner with me. He's on speakerphone. What's happening, man? I can't get you in tonight, but I can get you in here tomorrow morning. Can you get here tomorrow morning? And we look at each other, and he's like, tell him, yeah. I'm like, yeah, of course. He goes, all right, don't fucking kill yourself between now and tomorrow morning.
Right.
All right. So I go in there, and I walk into this place, man, and with a couple bags in my hand, and they're telling me Wayne's going to be in at 11. Wayne's going to be in 11. I'm hearing all about Wayne Garcia. Finally, I'm waiting in the hallway. They did like an intake. Wayne comes in, and just his energy, man. And this is another dude. His nickname was Rocky, and he had done way more prison time than I had ever had. He had done 32 treatment centers before he got sober.
Wow.
He had been through foster. He'd been through all of it, dope fiend. And he walks in, man, and he's like pressed down, sleeve down, and he's like coming to my office, and we sit down, and just the way he handled himself, I was like, the conviction and what he stood on and stood for, I was just listening to him, and this dude, these guys that I idolize. Now, these guys in my life, these guys were like giving me a dope sack, coming up with licks, how we're going to, but like, that's what I wasn't used to these types of guys offering me something new. After 3 or 4 days there, man, I wanted to leave. Bro. I just couldn't with sufficient force remember how bad it was. 3 or 4 days. Talks about that in our literature, man.
It's a disease of amnesia. We forget.
Fucking amnesia, right?
Right? We forget.
Can't forget that
Ever.
I caught my reflection in the window 3 days earlier and didn't know and reached out for help. Couldn't recall that.
Couldn't recall that you left your kids that you love so much. Now you're becoming your dad.
And Mike Brenner sees me in the hallway, and he goes, come to my office. And this dude could read me.
He knows game.
He knows game.
Game knows game, brother.
Sit me down, man. Like, what's up? He goes, what's going on? And I go, I'm out of here, dude. I'm leaving. He goes, I kind of figured something like that. He goes, man, you're uncomfortable. And that's duly right, he tells me. Because a guy like you, man, you used to fucking shooting dope out of a toilet and gang module, fucking breaking your kids' hearts, not showing up as a father. Partners can't trust you for shit. And he starts going through the list, and he goes, and right now, you're safe. You're not hurting anybody, not hurting yourself. Probably doing the best thing that you can do for your kids is you being right here. And he tells me this whole shit. And while he's talking, it sounds like Charlie Brown. I'm just like,
Yeah.
And he says, get up, man. And he opens up the door and he pokes out the door and he points down the way. He goes, you see that? Down there at the end of the hall. And I look and I see this exit sign. And I like, yeah, I see it. And he goes, I'm not talking about the exit sign. I'm talking about the broom and that mop that are hanging on the door. I'm like, yeah. He goes, I want you to grab that broom and that mop. I want you to fucking ice this floor out. And when you're done doing that, I want you to go into the kitchen. I want you to see if there's any fucking dishes in this place that you can do. See what you can do for this house. Because right now, all you're thinking about is yourself. And bro, I wanted to slap this guy.
I bet,
I wanted to slap this dude. And I remember he goes, excuse me. And he was like, I can close my door now. Excuse me. And he put me in the hallway. And I remember walking down the hallway and it was the exit sign or the broom and the mop. The exit sign, the broom and the mop. And by the time I got to that end of that hallway, I was able to recollect that I had said to myself when I came in, I need help. My decisions do not work. I've got to take some direction from somebody else.
You had some humility.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I grabbed that broom and mop broomed and I went into the kitchen and fucking, there was plenty of dishes to do. And as I'm on my way out from doing the dishes, there's a brother that's sitting at one of the dining tables and he's trying to fill out this job application. Dude can barely write. You barely talk. And he's like, Lucky, because that's what they called him, right? And he's like, hey, man, let me ask you something. And he's trying to ask me something to help him out with his application. And I'm like, all right. And so we're running down some stuff to him and that. And he's like, well, I'm like, give me that thing, man. So I take his application and the pen and I start asking him questions. Okay, all right. We could say you worked here from this time. They're not going to call, put a fake number. They're not going to call. No. Hey, give it to him. I don't think nothing of it. And I go upstairs to go to sleep that night. And I had a friend from Florence, man, Jaime, that I'd done time with. He was there and he leaned in my room and he goes, hey, bro, don't take off, man. Don't take off, man. Just at least not for tonight. But when I got in my bed and I lay down, I didn't feel like the piece of shit that I've felt like. I didn't feel like that. For some reason, me mopping that floor and washing dishes and helping this guy with his paper, for some reason, that's resonated in my head. And I was like, I might be 99% fucking all me, but I gave up 1% tonight. I did something for somebody else that I can't gain anything from. And I went to sleep that night. And through the next day, I just got up, didn't think much about it. And I see dude come through at like 10 in the morning through the hallway. The guy and he's like, Lucky. Well, I got the job. Guy tries to hug me. I'm like, hey, just cool out over here. He goes, bro, I got the job, And he was so excited, so happy. He's like, man, because you wrote this shit, man. So I felt good about that. And that triggered off, like, at least for me at that time, it was like, all right, man, service. If you can start being of service, dude, you'll feel better. I was doing it for selfish reasons. Like if I'm helping, I feel better. Things get better. And so service was the first thing of recovery that resonated with me. And I just jumped full board into like projects in that house. How can we all come together? Wayne Garcia, I remember him walking every night, Monday through Friday, he would come in and he would speak to the whole house. And I remember him coming in and going, man, he said it clear. We bring families back together with this program. So he said that, man. He goes, that's why I do my job. And we show up. It's okay to be a good man. It's okay to show up as a good father. Completely.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
That's what he did. And to this day, this guy's my mentor, bro. And so, my life and Seano, I think that some of us get so lost on drugs and alcohol like I did, that if you just remove that alone with no recovery or your life's going to get better.
You progress in your sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
You start making bread.
Yeah.
You start getting shit.
So it's getting good.
Your shit's looking tight. A lot of pretty ladies in your life. And then you forgot and you got amnesia.
Absolutely. I got high and then I'm homeless again. Yeah.
And you fucking burned it down again.
I burned it down, man. I burned it down. And the signs at 4.5 years of sobriety, I don't believe anybody just relapses.
No, of course not.
But yes, build up big life. And at 4.5 years, I start feeling like these accolades are weights. And I'm starting to feel the weight somehow. And things are not going the way I want in a relationship. And I have everything. And why isn't that working? And I start focusing on what's not working. I'm getting uncomfortable. I'm not calling back sponsees. I'm not showing up at my commitment. And I slowly start moving away. I thought money was going to fix everything.
Right.
I subscribed to that.
Yeah.
And now I had
That was your
this
higher
stuff.
power.
That was my higher power. And it wasn't. Even with it, I couldn't control the outcomes of what I wanted. And I got butthurt. I took it personal. And at that point in time, I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody. I felt like I was already on this pedestal of this guy that made so good. And how could I want to use? And I didn't tell anybody, man.
And you violated, you kept secrets.
Kept secrets. And I had secrets on the way in.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, a handful of stuff. Nobody's getting here.
Yeah.
And burned it down, man, and fucking found it necessary to use. And I was going to go out for one weekend out of town. And it turned into 13 years of in and out.
Years.
9, 10 months of sobriety, building up a company, getting the prizes, burning it down. And this was a pattern.
Yeah, I know it was, buddy. Then let's talk about this. Let's talk about the last relapse. Let's talk about when you tapped out and finally said, I'm fucking all in.
My father had passed away and my mom and dad were together. They'd come back together and remarried and were together. I'd already made amends with my father and people. And I was, but I had relapsed still and got loaded again. And my dad had just passed. And it was right as I had relapsed. I had relapsed again and my relationship was falling apart and I was losing my place, but it dressed it up to look like I'm moving in with my mom because my father passed and now I'm going to take care of her, but I'm completely out of my mind, loaded. So I am showing up, but I'm loaded and, I'm with my mom for almost a year and the antics and the shit that I'm doing, the property managers come to her and they're like, the police had already come over. They're like, we're going to have to evict you. So either you guys go or your son has to go. And I remember my mom crying and wringing her hands after I was there a year. And she was like, I can't be homeless. She was crying. She's asking me to leave and she didn't want to ask me to leave. And I had to run everything to the ground. So, there was no more friends or people. They're like couch.
Mom, dude.
I'm with my mom.
Yeah.
With two
Big
plastic
tough guy.
bags, bro.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're right.
And I was faced with really the streets, man. That was the only, and me, myself, I was unwilling to do that, and that got me willing, but I had nowhere to go. There was nobody was going to give me with my antics. And I called my mentor, Wayne Garcia. And now he's the vice president of Health Right 360. So now he runs a massive treatment center out of Northern California. And I call him. And this guy's not the easiest guy to get at, but my phone call gets answered. What's up, bro? And I run down to him where I'm at. He goes, listen, man, do you need me to send you a Greyhound ticket? I go, I think I can manage that. He goes, all right, are you on methadone? I go, yeah. He goes, all right, you get your I'm going to get the transfers made. He goes, get up here. You got 2 days to get up here. Get up here. And he goes, and pack your bags, man, because you're not coming up here for 90 days and going back to Los Angeles. You're going to be here for a while. And my mom was in tears and I kissed her. But part of her was like, she knew I had to go.
Yeah, of course she did.
And I ended up going up there and I was on methadone for my first 6 months, but you're fully engaged in the program. And I remember I got there, man, it was like a lot of parolees, trans, homeless, it's one of those type of treatment center. Bro, when I finally got, I was so grateful that I was in a safe place and the paint was peeling and the beds were busting, but I had a blanket and a pillow. And they were serving a hot meal and there was nobody fucking after me. And I was so grateful, man. And I just remember I struggled with being away from there was no more fucking Hot Chicks. There was no more fucking Air One. There was no more, none of that
man.
shit,
You had no
dude.
game, brother. Right.
Bro, I always had some hot chick to rub my back or pick me up. You know what I'm saying? There was always something. There was nothing.
Right.
Nothing. I was in this fucking treatment center, and that was it. And was it all perfect through it? Yeah, I mean, I guess it was all perfect, but did I wrestle with it? Yes, I wrestled with it. But the gratitude and the action and me starting to maybe allow myself to have a new experience, but bring some of the things that worked as well. And I knew that I have to get into service. I've got, and that's what I did there, bro. I got into service.
Back
in that fucking house. I became the head of core in that house, you know, and I do good when you put regimen, you know what I'm saying? Structure. Routines, bro. That's where I thrive, you know? And I spent 6 months in that treatment center. Then my time came to get ready for job search and go to sober living. Their sober livings was on Treasure Island, which is right outside of San Francisco. It's a little island, and they have 4 or 5 apartments. So I'm there. I'm like, I don't have a license. All my shit's gone. I've wrecked my life. So what happens? I'm like, I guess I'm going to stay in San Francisco for a little while. And I'm using public transportation, and now I've got to look for a job. I'm about to interview with Levi's for sales. I'm like, I'm about to like make a little life. I have to do what I have to do. And Wayne calls me and he's like, hey, I need you to come over to corporate office. And I'm like, all right. And he has a time. He's like, come in and see me. And I walk in his office and tells me, he's been watching me this whole time. He knows exactly what's going on. He goes, hey, I got an opportunity for you to be a coordinator of our sober living facility. If you're down, I'll give you the job. You'll go to sober living, but you'll have your own apartment and you'll be managing the island, 4 buildings for us, collecting rent, testing people. And this is what it pays. And I'm going to need you to get a couple certs at San Francisco City College. And I jumped all over it. And that's what I did. And I became a coordinator, and I worked up there for another 1.5 years. You know how you say like you had that thing of you know, an honest heart, or you know good right from wrong, right? I knew inside that I was holding secrets. I had been exposed to enough program and recovery to know, hey, dude, there's some shit that not only am I holding on to, but now I'm starting to contemplate, are these the things that are keeping me sick? Is because I'm not being honest with these 5 things, is that maybe the reason I keep on ending up here? And I didn't know if that was the reason. And I think it might be multiple, but they gave me a therapist to work with twice a week in this treatment center. And any experience I ever had with therapists, we're talking about the weather, we're talking about everything. I'm just going to talk with you for an hour and you know, we're not going to accomplish shit. And that kind of started happening, man, the first couple sessions. And I remember the end of our session, that therapist said to me, goes, hey, man, wait, you know, think about our next session. And if you want to get honest or you want to trust me to talk about something, think about that. Planted the seed. And I thought over the weekend, am I going to say the shit that's going on, that's happened in my life, you know, or am I not? And I remember I got into that room, dude, that following Tuesday, and I sat with this gentleman, man, and I told him, man, you know, about some abuse, some sexual abuse from my own, you know, some things, some things that my hands were in that I couldn't reverse, you know, and I, as I'm slowly saying this stuff, it was like an outer body, like those words hadn't come out of my mouth. So for me to say that and it come out of my mouth, I was almost looking at myself like, the fuck, you know, it was. And I was like, dude, this guy fucking, I don't know if this is gonna fucking walk to his phone and pick up the phone, or if he's gonna get up and physically try, you know, subdue me. And he got up, man, and he's like, man, stand up, man. And he fucking gave me a hug, man. And he's like,
how'd that hug feel? Because I'm feeling it right now.
He's saying to me, there's nothing wrong with you, bro. You're a fucking human being. You're just human. That's all he's telling me, is hugging me.
Could you hear it? Did you believe him? It took a while.
Dude. No, I believed him. I wanted to hear that. When it came out of his mouth, I needed to hear that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Another angel. Well, let me tell you, I don't think, I just really believe this. I don't think the guys that you looked up to in recovery, they laid it all down.
Hell yeah.
You have to lay it all down. That's just our opinion, right? I don't think guys like us can get free if we're keeping even 1% on. Okay, but you're sober 6.5 years now.
Yes.
Let's lock the lessons. Relapse, getting your kid back. Let's talk about some of the lessons.
You know, the relapse, I was continuously, up until the sobriety, I was only willing to do certain things that were suggested. Yeah, I might make some coffee. That's easy. Pick up some guys, take them to the, but I'm not going to get on my knees. I'm not going to pray. I meditate 3 days. Nothing's happening. I'm not doing it anymore. And I would pick and choose what I wanted to do around here.
Right.
When I threw it all away and was having trouble getting sober, somebody came up to me after a meeting at the log cabin and I couldn't get sober. And they looked at me and dude said to me, you know what, man, you may have to lose everything. And if you're lucky, you'll live, but you may have to lose everything until you start doing what we do around here to stay here.
Right on.
The guy said that to me.
Yeah.
And it ended up being the truth. So that's, you know, and now I do what's suggested now because I don't know if it's the meditation. I don't know if it's the sponsor. I don't know if it's showing up, I don't know what's keeping me sober. I'm doing all of it.
It's working though.
It's working and I'm doing all of it, man.
In sobriety, your son's struggling now.
I'm early in sobriety. My son's been struggling in and out of treatment centers and ODing. And I get a call, man, and I'm a couple years sober, just moved back down to LA and somebody that I know that fucks around is like, hey man, your son was over here with another friend getting high. Your son's OD'd a few times. I've been keeping him up mouth to mouth resuscitation. But it's like, dude, you got, you know, I'm like, where are you? Is he alive? It's like, yeah. I go, where are you? He tells me where he's at, and I fucking bolt over there. And my son he's a mess, man. I get him, and he's just in tears and like shaking up. And I grab him. He's 24 at the time. It's all right. And I hug him. I was fun. Get in the car and, you know, get him something to eat. I tell him he's in tears, and I get him over to his grandfather's house in Santa Monica and get him set up and make sure he has food. Just relax. We'll get through it. And his mom came after I had to leave. She came and watched him, and his mom told him at that point in time, even before he was sober, she goes, you got 48 hours here and then you're out of here because you're not going to do this with your grandfather.
Right. So
you got 48 hours and you're going to have to figure it out. And sure enough, you know, within 48 hours, my son's like, I got a copay place to go detox. He's calling my ex-wife, and my ex-wife, like, she has the money. And she's like, you better find a place that's like no copay. And we're not doing this again. We've done it. My wife is strong like that. Oof. She loves that boy to death.
Yeah.
And she said that. And he calls me and I don't have the money. I can't help him if I wanted to, right? I go, I don't know what to tell you, but you're gonna have to. And he starts calling, and that was the beginning of his journey, having to find a detox. Then he called the treatment centers, and he got in the bed shoe, and so that unfolds, and it stuck. And he said, I'm going to get my KDAC. And he says, all right, I'm going to work as a tech. Now they're giving me a position. I'm going to night school and I'm going to get a degree. I'm going to become a therapist and I'm going to have my own practice. And sure enough, he's one of the head counselors at Betchuva today. He just got his bachelor's, in his master's program. He married a therapist. I have a beautiful grandson, and I talk to them every other day. I see them a couple times a week because my kids want to see me, not because they're putting up with the dad. They want to see me. And that's like the biggest guy. It's really the biggest thing I got, man, is my relationship with the type of father I am.
You got your family back, man.
I got my family back, man. I did.
Yeah. And you're not willing to trade it in anymore.
No, I don't want to play with it anymore, man.
Right. What does Shell mean to you?
You know, I've had home groups, I've had men groups, stags meetings that I've been to. I came to this room, and this room, for some reason, when I first sat in it with you and sat in this meeting, the topics and the shares and what the men were talking about in the room, maybe I should say the addiction in many, many forms, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know, I like gamble, I like sex, I like porn, like all these different things. And what was being talked about was, you know, how to make it through a day and how to show up and how to show up for your kids and show up in your relationship and how you navigate that and being honest. And I was hearing things in Shell that I just wasn't hearing in other rooms. And I quickly gained a trust, and I started shaking hands, and I was welcomed into this room. And the energy is always the same. It's like acceptance, love. It's a family here of men that are willing to put their shit out in the middle of the floor, man.
Yeah, it's beautiful. What do you want to say to the folks who are struggling? What do you want to say to the people out there right now that are, day 2, fucked up, scared?
Hopefully you're done. Hopefully you're doing this for you. I've found that until I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, I wanted to do this for me. My kids and my family and the people around me get the byproducts of me being sober. I will say this to the newcomer, like sometimes it gets hard before it gets better. And not everybody just, and so remember that. I tried to prove the thing wrong. I said, you know what? I'm going to do everything and see what happens. And my life exploded. And trust this process. Trust the process. Don't trip and don't take anything personal.
Where can people find you and talk about your company? And
I have a brand called Supermax.
Yeah.
You can go to supermaxharbor.com. I am the brand manager for a company called Cookies out of San Francisco and Los Angeles.
How many people do you put to work, brother?
A good amount, bro.
A good amount, right?
Yeah.
Take that in, man. That's what we do here.
Yes.
We put people to work.
Yeah, cookies and vibes. So those are brands. Also helping out my buddy with Joker Brand, my partner Esteban. So I'm staying in apparel, working on some media stuff. But I'm right here on the west side. And you'll see me running either Cookies or Supermax or out there or in this community giving a hand at places. But yeah, man, don't forget that you woke up today.
Amen.
That this is a gift. It's life, and it's meant to be lived, and it's not to be meant to be lived on a street corner infested with abscesses or locked in the fucking motel room, sweating. Like, not for me. That wasn't what I was meant to be here. So, I'll wrap with saying this, and that's that. A lot of things happen in my life, and I use those things as a badge to do what the fuck I want to do in life. And through recovery, I think the biggest thing that happened to me was the narrative changed. And through this recovery process, I got to find out that there is a power bigger than me. And when I plug into that, I get to define who and what my life looks like. Yeah. I took responsibility back for my situation. May not be responsible for what happened when I was a child, but I'm responsible for what happens now and moving forward. And I want to be a father that leads, and I want to be a man that leads. And that's my responsibility and my obligation here. And I gladly take on that.
The Seano Show is a production of iHeart Podcasts, hosted by me, Seano McFarlane, produced by Pod People and 28th Ave. Our lead producer is Keith Cornelek. Our executive producer is Lindsay Hoffman. Marketing lead is Ashley Weaver. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.